Ghanshyam sir, should we begin?
Yes.
So, I'm always delighted at the prospect of a new day, a fresh try, with perhaps a bit of magic waiting somewhere behind the morning. With this thought by an anonymous writer, we begin this day and this venture. Good morning, one and all present here today. Dr. G.A. Ghanshyam, founder and General Secretary, Indian Society for Promotion of English Language and Literature, Professor of English, Directorate of Higher Education, Raipur, Chhattisgarh. Dr. Father John P.J., Principal, the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. Dr. Ashok Sachdeva, Vice President, ISPEL. Dr. Shamta Chaudhary, Coordinator, ISPEL. Dr. Samina Azhar, Assistant Professor, Department of English at the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. I, Dr. Shibani Basu Dubey, Associate Professor and Head, Department of English, BSSS, extend a warm and hearty welcome to one and all who are going to witness the signing of an MOU, followed by the National Level Workshop on Research Methodology, a jointly collaborated event by the Department of BSSS English and ISPEL. The event has witnessed a huge response with a registration of approximately 350 participants, which is a proof that we are in the right direction and our fraternity has shown its trust on us. With these words, I call upon G.A. Ghanshyam Iyengar sir for his address.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shibani. And indeed, a very warm good morning to all of you, those who are present on this virtual platform. Honorable Principal of very prestigious college, Bhopal School of Social Sciences, the coordinator of this particular event, Dr. Shibani Basu, and the member of the Department of English, the coordinator, Dr. Shamta Chaudhary from ISPEL, the Vice President of ISPEL, Dr. Ashok Sachdeva, the IT coordinator, Mr. Pramod Dhengle, and all those who are present on this virtual platform, very good morning to you. ISPEL, as the acronym says, Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature, is the lockdown brainchild of all the like-minded people. During the lockdown, when everything was locked down and people were looking down, ISPEL thought of looking up towards the academic events. Though it was a pandemic, but we thought, let the pandemic be converted into pan-academic. And somebody has said, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a progress, and working together is success. So today is the success, wherein ISPEL joined hands with Bhopal School of Social Sciences, Bhopal, to work together towards the fraternity to facilitate and elevate the fraternity. Until and unless we facilitate, the fraternity couldn't be elevated. So the facilitate the self, which is the most required thing in this academia. So we are here today to witness the facilitation of the self so that we can elevate all the people. The entire humanity is to be elevated. Research, which happens to be the most important thing in the academia, needs to be encouraged and needs to be strengthened. As far as Indian researchers are concerned, Indian research has not been termed as one of the good research area in the world. So we need to encourage people to go towards much more deep research, and the research should undertake the community development. The research should be done for the community. The research should be done for the prosperity of the community. And if we all of us can join hands together and work towards the better research, let entire world see towards us and say, yes, India has become one of the biggest country in the world, which can prove that, yes, research is the essence of academia. So all of us, those who have joined here, will welcome this particular venture. I congratulate Bhopal School of Social Sciences and all the people, those who are associated with ISPEL, for this wonderful academic adventure and the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ghanshyam sir. I now request Dr. Father John P.J., the principal of the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Shibani. A very hearty good morning to all present, and a special mention of Mr. G.A. Ghanshyam, who is the founder and general secretary of ISPEL. There's an old saying, that we all have heard time and again, that united we stand, divided we fall. And I think togetherness is the beginning of any group activity. And an MOU like this, I always stress on that must be functioning, and also it must bring in, some enrichment in the area of studies, learning in the sector of higher education. As Mr. Ghanshyam said, I agree fully that the major concern of higher education today is research and training. And if we can join hands together to bring up these areas of higher education, I would truly take pride in saying that we have succeeded in achieving the goal that we have put up together. Thank you for signing this this MOU, and we hope that we will work together hand in hand in future to bring up a better outlook and also a better learning in higher education. All the best to all the participants today who are here. I'm told that there are more than 300 who have already registered to attend this webinar, and in itself shows how enthusiastic the audience are, and how much they thirst for to know about research and research methodology. Thanks to all the participants. Once again, all the best, and God bless you all.
Now, it is something that should be sustained throughout your life. It is not enough that you do one project and then we are happy with that, or maybe we write a paper, or maybe we guide a particular student. No. It is something that has to be done with a great amount of continuity. Now, let me move on to the next slide. Dr. Shibani. Hello. Now, when we look into the idea of how to begin with a research, we need to know that it all begins with some kind of a problem. Now, we need to find a solution to a given problem. Some problem should actually disturb you from the beginning itself. When you read a book, when you read an article, when you read a course book, or maybe when you read from mass media, now you should have a feeling that there is some problem that we need to address. Now, this is applicable to all areas of research, but how to identify a problem which is viable for a full-length research? Now, that is the question that we are looking for here. Now, how to identify a problem? Maybe you imagine a situation. For example, you are a young student, maybe an aspiring researcher, and you visit a professor for the sake of doing research. And naturally, the first thing that the professor might ask you is what the problem is, or what kind of a problem that you are going to do research on. It's a very important issue. Now, if you can't give a satisfactory kind of an answer, now in that case, if the problem is rather shallow, means without much of a depth, in that case, now what is the point in having a research? So it all begins with the problem. Now, what is the problem that we are trying to address, and what kind of a solution that you are looking at, or possibly out of this particular research, or maybe this particular project? Now, it all begins with that. So next slide, please. Now, in that, if you look at that, if you try to address that, we come to know that, especially in English, if you the guide or the supervisor or the professor that you have contacted might tell you that there are so many issues that are prevalent that can be addressed. Now, if you are interested in racial discrimination, racism, or ethnic issues, now if you are interested in Black women writing, now you can start with Americana. Now, I'm not suggesting anything here. I'm trying to tell you that there are enough a number of leading kind of ideas and books available. It is not enough that somebody will suggest you with a topic and then you do research on that. No, we can try to identify some leading examples from major writers as well as some major themes, or maybe some major titles if you read articles. So if you are dealing with racial discrimination, we can begin with Chimamanda Adichie's American. And if you are talking about marginalization, now in that case, we have, maybe for those who are from Karnataka know that, say Chomanaduri, for example. Now, if maybe some other Dalit writing, and if you are interested in film adaptations, now maybe we can have a first-hand experience of how a topic like, or maybe a film like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, how that has been adapted, the novel into film. And if you are interested in climate change or narratives related to climate change, as a beginning, you can read The Hungry Tide, Ghosh, Amitav Ghosh, the Hungry Tide. And if you are interested, nowadays many people are doing related to this trauma, for example, trauma. And maybe you can begin with a fiction like God Help the Child. Or if you are interested in migration or diaspora, we can begin with Such a Long Journey. I'm sure most of you know that book, Mysteries book. Or maybe if you are interested or related to eco-critical reading, maybe a book like The Hobbit can be of some help, especially at the beginning. And if you are interested in slave narratives, again, nowadays it has become rather quite shocking, especially news from the neighboring areas, slave narratives. Now, the autobiography of Miss Jane can be a beginning for that. Next slide, please. If you are looking at patriarchal oppression, you can see, for example, The Slave Child, The Slave Girl, another very important book related to that. Or if you are dealing with psychological issues, there can be a book like Everything Here is Beautiful. So that can give you an idea about something like, as I said, something like an opening to a given topic. It is very important. Getting into a problem is very important. Similarly, cultural identity, we all know the namesake. Or if you are talking about feminine consciousness, Shashi Deshpande, Roots and Shadows. If you are dealing with myths and folklore, the Palace of Illusions, or maybe if you want to know different versions of Ramayana, if you know that essay well, that is also a kind of a help towards moving towards a particular problem that you are trying to identify and discuss. And if you are interested in social ethos, you can take White Tiger. And if you are dealing with, if you are interested in self-actualization, books related to that, we can have a book like Life of Pi. Or maybe if you want to bring in different perspectives into one reading or one narrative, you can have a book like Siddhartha. Or that's why I said comparative perspectives. You can have the Buddhist kind of a tradition, or maybe the Indian tradition related to that. Now, all those are possible. Now, why I have given you a list of themes and a list of books. Now, these are not suggestions for you to take as a simple topic as such, but the possibility of the first step towards an area that you are interested in, especially in literary studies. So in research, the first thing is try to identify a problem that you believe is vital, so that it kindles an interest in you for a long time, and that is sustained for maybe 3 or 4 years, and finally you publish it and get, of course, a PhD. And for others who have already got a PhD, maybe for postdoctoral, or maybe for those who are looking for project, that is also there, like that. Or maybe if you're writing an article. Now, this is very important. Just a beginning, like how to address how to identify and address a problem. What is the perspective in which it can be done? Now, if you look into the present day, go to the next slide, please. If you look into the present day titles, you can see, I think, almost all the words beginning with 2 letters, R and E. So when you look into the titles, you can see if for almost all articles, it is something like revisit, rereading, rewriting, remaking, refashioning, recasting, redefining. Now look at that, reconsidering. Now this is one way of doing, in the contemporary research, some kind of research, in the sense that you are trying to bring in some new light into the given text. Of course, there could be many people who must have written on that, but you are actually looking at things from a fresh perspective. Now, what is that perspective? It is very important. So you can also see that there are some other terminologies given there. For example, the relevance of a particular novel or a poem now, or maybe a representation of some kind of an issue, maybe referentiality, reversal, reminiscence, resistance. These days, political narratives are very, very popular. So resistance is another important theme. Now, why I have summarized all this in one slide? The reason is very simple. We are actually living in a days in which it is not that we have to identify a problem. Sometimes the problem must have already been addressed by somebody. Now it is time for us to give a new light, maybe look at that with a fresh perspective, so that you can unearth so many things out of that, particular text. Now go to the next slide, please. Now you can see that when you look into a kind of topics, I'm addressing this particular issue from the perspective of a young researcher. So let me make it a narrative like that. I have already informed you that it is between an interaction between a young researcher and a senior professor. What happens when they interact, when they get into a kind of an act of identifying a problem. So he might or she might suggest, why don't you? So you must have read some books. Now you are now moving on to the issue of how to identify a topic. Now how to narrow down to a particular level by which people will come to know, okay, this is what I'm trying to focus on. This is my topic. If that is the issue, now how do we go about narrowing down and making a sensible statement, a research problem into a sensible statement? I will tell you what that statement is all about in the next slide. Now, when you look into the say, I have given you an example there. So one side we have a book, the other side we have a topic. The book that I have suggested is only a suggestion. Don't take it seriously. It is only a suggestion. Say the book that I am suggesting is The Kite Runner, and the topic is racial discrimination. It's an open kind of thing. Many people have already done on, or maybe different shades of that already. So it is only a suggestion. Now you have a character called Hassan, who belongs to a tribe called Hazara. Is a minority ethnic race in Afghanistan. Now, the question here is, now somebody is asking this issue, or discussing this issue. If the young researcher is asking the professor, so what should I do with this particular topic there? So you suggested that it is always good at looking at things from the racial discrimination perspective. Now, what I can do about this? So naturally, you have to frame a question. How the Hazaras are subjected to discrimination in Afghanistan society. Now, this is one way of narrowing down to a particular level in a given topic. In the sense, the topic can be broad at the beginning, but maybe in a sitting, maybe 2 or 3 sittings, like you have to interact with your guide, maybe more than that. Sometimes it might take more than a month or 2 to have a discussion and to come to a viable, feasible, interesting topic. I told you, I see things from the perspective of a student and not from an authority on this particular subject, because it is up to the student to design or to understand how this methodology should be understood. The idea of research should be taken seriously. So let me now move on to the next slide. Now I think I've clarified the point there. The study that you have taken up is a journey. So it is a kind of a journey. It's a journey for what? To identify a solution to the problem that you have identified. So it's actually, so if you work with a particular topic for the next 2 or 3 years, it's actually a means of continuing your constant companionship, association, and reading of a given theme, or maybe a given problem that you are trying to find solution, so that you end up with something really like, I should say, quantitatively really nice, in the sense you can show people that these are my conclusions, these are my recommendations. Means you have come up with something original. To get an original result, the topic should also be original. Now, otherwise, now you don't expect wonders out of a commonplace kind of a subject. So that is what I said. The time that you spend to get a topic is very important, because it is relevant. It is not going to be a waste, because that has to be taken seriously. The time that you spend initially for the first 2 or 3 months, from there, out of maybe constant reading and rereading. Now you know why I use that word. Because of that, finally you end up with what we call as a great idea at the end, in the sense some definite conclusions, so that people will know that he has created an original concept out of the given situation. So it should have a good beginning and a good ending. Now that is how it has to have, because that is an everlasting thing, because you become an authority in that particular area. That is why of course I'm focusing from the PhD perspective. That's why I'm talking about things from the research methodology perspective for the sake of students. Go to the next slide, please. Now the teacher, of course, will be vary about next slide. Will be vary about what is happening with the text, the kind of text that you might select. Now you might select different things. Next slide, please. Next slide. Hello. Hello. Hello? Yeah. No, text. I'm talking about text. Now, the previous slide. Text. Yeah, thank you. Now, what kind of sources that you can look into for the sake of doing research? What are the possible sources? Now, you have so many number of literary texts possible: short stories, poems, novels, plays, memoirs, all that. Whether memoir can be taken as a literary text is a debatable point, but still, now I have bracketed them so that in some cases, autobiographical narrations are also taken for research. So all these are typical sources: plays, novels, all that. Along with that, nowadays, for the last maybe 20 years or so, maybe 20, 25 years, people have taken interest in graphic novels, comics, and film and fiction. Now, these are areas that people have started taking what we call as interest. Now, why do people take interest in comics? For example, recently in a journal, a UGC care listed journal that was published in June 2021, I read a beautiful article on two characters, Sita and Draupadi, as represented in Amar Chitra Kada. Now, I'm sure Amar Chitra Kada is a very popular kind of a comic, or I don't call it fully a comical kind of a thing, but a graphic representation of our own like past, etc. Maybe you can call it as a comic, but that illustrated kind of stories are representation of our Indian tradition. They have taken, or they have heavily depended on our cultural narratives. And in this particular article that I am referring to, the researcher has focused on two characters, Draupadi and Sita, and how they are represented. Interesting. It's a very interesting article, and you have some brilliant insights. based on contemporary like theories of feminism. The way in which the body language, the dialogues, and the way the representation is being done. Now all these come together so that it is it's a kind of a rereading of from a fresh perspective, I should say. Now that's what I said. If you are interested, you can do based on comics or graphic novels and film and fiction. That is another area which, of course, for the last few years, people have been doing it wonderfully. And there are so many theoretical books also that are available on that. Please go to the next. And I have to make sure that when I titled it Beware. The reason is very simple. You have mingling of genres. In some cases, if you are not very sure of how the adaptations are done, please don't do it. These are only my suggestions. So when there is a kind of mingling of genres, of different kinds of things, say a novel and an epic, or maybe something like that, if you are not very sure of the theoretical and the possible research perspectives, please don't do. And if you are making use of articles from journals, in the sense newspapers, mass media, in that case, if you are not very sure of how to use it as a cultural text or maybe as a political text, please don't do that. So there are certain things which you have to be very careful. Similarly, software applied analysis, there are some limitations. I'll come to that later. Mass entertainment. Of course, you can do it as a culture studies, from a culture studies perspective. Maybe there are people who have done or written articles on circus, especially the representation of body in circus. That's again a mass entertainment. Of course, films are there, but I'm talking about, and again, surveys. Now, how can we conduct, in the sense, surveys as part of literary studies? There are certain great limitations. And when you take film as the only text, there can also be limitations. If you are taking a Shakespearean text, and if you are taking any Hindi film or maybe any other regional film so that we have to have a study on the adaptations, it's okay. But if you take only film as the text that is there, you have to have enough competencies to deal with a subject like film studies. Otherwise, you might end up in some kind of a problem. So there has to be some kind of a basic appreciation of films, theories related to films, more number of watching and observing the science and the semiotics, the language, all those. So those are part of film studies, and if you are not sure of those, please don't do it. And again, prose text, if you are dealing with non-fiction, for example, studies related to Shashi Tharoor's works. If that case, now I'm not talking about his novels, I'm talking about his his non-fiction category books. It is not always easy to have that kind of an analysis as we do what we call as fiction and other different categories. Let us now move on to the next question. So I have told you how to begin. So the first part is over. Now I told you at this particular moment, my young researcher, the fictional character, must have got an idea about, okay, this is my topic. This is what I am trying to project. So that must have been completed. So that phase is over. Now let me take him to the other level, the next level, how to design your research, in the sense that how to go about designing or visualizing and planning your research. It is also important here. Now go to the next slide. You can see that slide may not be like that clear, but still I think people can read it closely if you attempt it. You can see that it all begins with, I have already told you some notions, some vague ideas, and then you start researching on the existing literature, and then you make some initial observations, and then you reach a problem. You have stated your problem. From there, you have to move on to the level of hypothesis. We call it as a research hypothesis. This is a crucial step in molding your research or building your research. I told you it is a statement. It is a statement of what you are supposed to do when we do research. And it is actually a reference file until you submit your final synopsis, or maybe before the submission of the final document, or what we call as the PhD document, means the thesis. It is a constant reference because the hypothesis will help you to guide throughout your 2.5 years or 3 years as a constant reference, so that you may not collect unnecessary things. You may not go into other areas which are not meant for you. So it will help you to curtail your aspirations, control you, at the same time focused on what your topic is all about. So that limit can be set by creating a hypothesis. Go to the next slide. Now, if you see that this is a basic design, in the next slide you can see this is a basic design for all researchers. So it all begins with some basic questions. For example, what are the research questions there? What is the problem? What is the background? Next slide, please. You can see that. The research question, the problem, the background information, what are the observations that we have to consider here, how do we formulate a hypothesis. So I have already moved up to around 30% of the given design, because I have reached almost to the level of hypothesis. And from there, you start visualizing that you have reached up to that level from which you can design your experiment, in the sense you can design the project, you can you can collect data, you can test your hypothesis, you can analyze and interpret your results, and then you can publish it. Now, this you have to have in your mind whenever you do your research. And if you don't do it, if you don't visualize it, and if you forget any of these steps, sometimes if you slide without knowing that you have missed out one step, you can end up in trouble. So this sequence you should have in your mind when you do your research. So it's a crucial part in your research to have a design in front of you, so that when you successfully complete one, you can mark it that, okay, this part is over. Now let me move on to that. Such a planning, kind of a very, I should say, intelligent planning and sustained effort is the research in this. It's a rigorous work. I accept that. It is a very rigorous kind of a work, but that planning and execution is necessary, because you have to make sure that your product is really good. Quantitatively and qualitatively, people should be able to admire that it's a quality product at the end, in the sense finally everything has been said as per the original hypothesis, the statement that you have posted at the beginning. Now let me move on to the next. Now, how to research. Now, this is a crucial point that I need to focus on, because I purposefully put RE within brackets, because people think that sometimes searching for data and research can be equated. No, it cannot be. Because if you follow a design, as I have told you just now, you know how to differentiate between research and search and all. Now, we'll move on to the next part. In the next slide, as I told you, what is research? This is a very common thing. Now, when I say research, maybe now I'll go back to the story of the young researcher. Now, when he is in the department, his friends might ask you, what is research? And if you give an answer like, I'm searching for knowledge, it is not a specific kind of a thing that we look for. Now, all these things, all those listed ideas are not, in a way, a complete sense, I should say, a definition of research. Okay, it is easy to say that it is an exploration from the known to the unknown. It is a kind of a careful investigation. It is a scientific and systematic search. Yeah, all these are right, but these are not complete by itself. These are common sense definitions. I will tell you that. So before I move on to the real aspect of how to understand research, these cannot be taken as standard definitions, because they have themselves some kind of a drawback, some kind of a not a defect as such. Something is missing in these. So that's what I said. Research in common parlance, among common people, when your relations are asking. So the young researcher will say that, okay, it is like this. It is an effort to gain new knowledge. Fine, yes, it is right. But does that bring in or encompass all the necessary things which are to be considered to say this is research? No. Okay, that is the end of research, to gain knowledge. Fine. Now let me move on to the next slide. Many people, especially at the beginning, they don't even differentiate these three words. Say data, information, and knowledge. Now, what is data? What is information? And what is knowledge? Now, we people, maybe those who have already completed research, those who are guiding people, they might think this is such a silly kind of a question. What is there to discuss all this? But for a young researcher, or maybe for a postgraduate student, they may have some problems there. They say, I do data collection. Why do you go to the library? I want to seek some information. Now, what do you get if you go to the library? I gain knowledge. Are they the same? No, they are not. They are different because of certain yardsticks, certain reasons. So when you say data, we all know, especially professors who are listening to me, we all know data is not a processed kind of a thing. It is raw, R-A-W, raw. Whereas information is something which is processed. We know because it becomes specific, it suits certain demand, information. So we call it like processed data is information. But can you say getting some information can make you a knowledgeable kind of a person? May not be. Because when you say knowledge, it requires some kind of an effort on the part of somebody to gain as well as to reproduce, as well as to give insight on a particular topic by which he can share expertise on that. That is what his knowledge is. So when you say somebody is a knowledgeable person, he has to have that expertise. It is not that he can have, maybe he can share a lot of information. The problem is when you do Google search, you get maybe a kind of data or maybe even information too. But can you say what you get is knowledge? No, it is not. Because knowledge is something that you have to be clear about. What exactly that you are trying to transact. Because it requires a lot of sustained effort on the part of somebody to amass not just a lot of information, but to bring up to a level by which, at that sublime level by which he must be able to critique and analyze each and every domain of that particular area. He becomes a master, and then he can also give insights on other disciplines, even if it is part of a kind of an interdisciplinary kind of a project. So that is why I gave a definition there. What is exactly expected of a research? So research is an original contribution. Very important. It is an original contribution to the existing stock of knowledge, making for its advancement. So it is not just a matter of gaining. It is actually updating, upgrading, and moving to that higher level by which people gain insights. People become masters on in the given domain or the discipline that we are discussing about. That is what we are looking for in the 21st century. Now we move to the next slide. Now this is for the young people, not for the professors. It is just an open source Shakespeare kind of a thing. Now this is not for professors. Now, if you go to this particular site, you can do a search. I told you there is a difference between search and research. Now, if you go to this particular site, like open sources or sourceshakespeare.org, you can type a particular word, for example, rose, or maybe love, maybe mad, and you will get some result. Like Shakespeare, in his complete works, he has used the word rose 155 times. Love, if you type that word, it will analyze the entire data. It will search for the entire Shakespearean work, and finally it will say that Shakespeare has used this word love for 2,209 times. And look at the word God, 1178. Now, my question is, can you consider this as research? No. If you say yes, sorry, it is no. Because it is only a search. You are only doing not, you are only just finding out some kind of a data out of the complete verse of Shakespeare, by which it won't lead to anything that is that we can call it as a real information for further studies. And it is only a computer kind of a search. That's what I said. When you do data analysis using computers, please don't take this as a model. Please don't, because the number of hits, the number of citations, etc., they may not lead to anything like substantial amount of knowledge. It can be an information for you to share with others, maybe for fun, maybe for some kind of, like what kind of writer Shakespeare was. Maybe people, those who are interested in computers, can develop similar softwares for D.H. Lawrence, maybe for Charles Dickens, maybe for Gabriel Marquez. Now, no, but that is of no use for us. For a researcher, these things are just raw data. Now go to the next slide, please. Now, from here, we have to be very clear. This is what Clifford Woody would say regarding research. Now, it all begins with defining and redefining problems. The first step, I told you that. Secondly, formulating hypotheses or suggested solutions. Then, collecting, organizing, and evaluating data. Then from there, you move on to what we call as making deductions and reaching conclusions out of that, out of the analysis that you have done. Then, if it is really essential, when we move on to the final phase, we do what we call as the testing the conclusions to find out whether you have achieved what is being proposed as a hypothesis. Sometimes it may end up with what we call as it cannot be proven right, or it cannot be proven wrong, or whatever it be. Sometimes we call it as null hypothesis. Now I am not going into the what we call as the area which generally we don't take it as research for the English literary studies. So I'm not going to that area now, because in that case I will have to speak about variable, non-variable sampling, random sampling techniques, and other empirical kind of analysis or interpretation. All those are part of maybe economics, or maybe social sciences, etc. But for us, these are not, in the sense, presently in this context, not really valid. Let us now see the word hypothesis. Just see the next slide. You can see that. What is the meaning of the word hypothesis? Hypothesis is a combination of two things: hypo and thesis. Hypo means what? A tentative or a kind of a statement, or a subject to the verification. So it has to be verified. But thesis means a statement, means about the solution to a given problem. So that means it is a tentative statement about what? About the solution of the problem. So as I said, it is not a finality. It has to be proved. You have to prove it towards the end of your project or research. Then only you can call it as, yeah, I have come up with something original according to the plan that I have argued out, or according to the plan that I have designed, etc. So it offers a solution. It gives us a solution of the problem that is to be verified. So hypothesis, even for English teachers or English researchers, that is also essential. If you refer to maybe Shodh Ganga, for example, look at some of these standard theses, like theses that are available there. You will see that these all these standard theses begin with the idea of hypothesis. Means it will tell you the objective of the research. It will tell you the statement of the problem. It will give you what exactly is the reason for doing this particular research, and what is the possible solution out of this. And this is what we generally understand as hypothesis. Now, go to the next. In short, we can say that, in short, the search for knowledge through objective and systematic method of finding solution to a problem. No, that is a a definition that is probable, I should say, in our context. And that is what we understand as research. The search for knowledge through objective and systematic method of finding solution to a problem. So you have a problem and you want to find a solution to that. Next slide, I think people can be confused because I said I'm not going to the data, but that next slide is meant for people who are doing or expecting something related to ELT and all, maybe English language teaching, maybe some kind of empirical kind of a study. Look at the next slide, please. Slide number 23. And I'm sorry, in the given slide, there is some problem in the representation. It is related to qualitative and quantitative data. Sorry for that. I have already mentioned to this to Dr. Shibani. Some problem is there. It is related to quantitative and qualitative data. Qualitative means you can use library research and textual analysis, whereas quantitative means you use statistical data from text or respondents. Now, don't bother about this now because this is not meant for literature students or maybe students who are aspiring to become full-time research scholars in a discipline related to humanities or literary studies. Go to the next slide, madam. Next. Now, two important terminologies are also there. Now, methods and the difference between methodology and method. So we'll see what a method is all about. It refers to a codified series of steps. Now, it proposes certain steps. When we talk about method, it actually talks about a step. Whereas in methodology, it is a study of methods involved in field endeavor or in problem solving, or it actually refers to some assumptions that underline a particular study. So don't confuse these two terms, methods and methodology. Those are not the same. They have their own kind of differences, one at the micro level and the other at the macro level, because when we say methodology, it encompasses so many ideas and theories. Now let us move on to the next slide. In literature review, we have to be prepared with these things. You have to be having a summary, which is a recap of the important information of the source. We have to have a synthesis, a kind of a reorganization or reflection of that of the information that you are looking at. And it might give a new interpretation also. That is also possible when we go for literature review. And we need to evaluate the source also. It is not enough that you just comment on the source. We need to have what we call as some kind of an evaluation of the sources. Don't just quote from various books one after the other. It is necessary that you have to evaluate in what context, why do I cite this particular source. Go to the next slide, please. Now, we have to identify past work. Yeah, that is important. Past work, identifying the past work done on the text. But it is not enough that you just merely look at those past papers. What we have to do here is, it is not enough that you recollect the past work done or maybe past project papers or review papers. What is or maybe the ideas given by critics. No, it must be given in such a way that how far those are relevant to the subject or the topic that you have taken up for study. Now that is the danger, because when I evaluate thesis, I have seen that people, because it is literature review, they try to bring in lots and lots of data to impress the evaluator that I have referred to that book, this book, or maybe that critical study. Good. Of course, it is good that you have read all those. But most important thing is how far this is relevant to the given study that you have taken, where in which no possible leading answers are there, or maybe comments are there. That is the problem that I have found. Next. Now, what is important here is to identify the points in which you think you can offer a fresh perspective if possible. Now, that is what we are looking for. That is why I said, discuss the works, do not merely quote. You have to discuss the given work. Don't just quote. Quoting is easy. Like Professor Ayyappa Panikkar of Kerala University, a well-known poet and critic and a professor, and he used to say, I read your thesis. It's a nice book of quotations. Now, it's a popular joke in the sense you have quoted from various sources. Finally, what is your contribution? We don't know. It's actually a book of quotations. It's a 500-page volume quoted, and you have brought in quotations from various scholars and authors. But finally, what is the end? How far is your stand proven right? Now, what is your argument? Well, that is missing. That is why we say discuss the work. Just don't quote from various sources. Because if you let the quotations speak for you, what will happen is you will miss your point. So elaborate on the specific details as far as possible. Now go to the next point. For beginners, next slide please, you can see that we have no depth regarding theory. Just see, there are more than 21 theory or theoretical perspectives. Well, I'm not going to read all that. It is a very, I should say, a popular kind of thing now, especially critical theory. So I don't want to get into the different schools and aspects because we don't have time. But you have to understand that these are there for us to help us analyze your perspective, or use it in such a way that you can analyze it as per the need of the text that you have taken for study. So first get into the idea that what you actually require, and then based on the requirement, use the theory which is applicable to the given context. So these are the very common, I should say, the most common theories of all. Go to the next slide. And there are even further paradigms. Look at that. More than different schools are there. In the next slide, you can see. What are they? We can have critical discourse analysis, hypertext theories, minority discourses, all that. So we have enough and more number of approaches, schemes, perspectives as far as methodology is concerned. Now they all help us in a way depending on the subject that you take. So one particular theory can be applied based on the way that you want to analyze a particular topic. Go to the next. Now we move on to the most important aspect. Now the student has, I should say, my hypothetical student has interacted with the professor, collected data, he has got all possible information, and he is about to write. And the professor, now she is happy that the progress has been well. Now it is all done. So this is what I should say, subtext of what I'm trying to argue out. So don't miss the two characters there, the professor and the student. So then now the young researcher is about to write something. Writing is a very crucial part. Generally, these things are not discussed in methodology classes. Now, people talk about different aspects of what we call as how to go about doing research. But how to write is very rare. I should say that part is not generally discussed. Go to the next slide, please. Now, I told you, in the next slide, as you can see, there is always this explanation of theoretical framework. Yes, it is there. You have to do what framework that you have used to explain that, or how far you have explained those perspectives, the theoretical framework. And then linking the theoretical framework to the thesis focus means your hypothesis. How will you link the theoretical framework that you have selected with the thesis or the focus of the thesis, as per the variables that you have. And then how do you bring that to the level of analysis? Linking theoretical framework to the level of analysis. So if you don't do it, if you don't bring these factors together sequentially, first theoretical framework, then linking theoretical framework to thesis for the focus or the hypothesis, and then how far you can link theoretical framework to analysis. If you don't do that, you will see a problem like this, as you can see in the next slide. Maybe professors sitting in the other side will clearly, in most cases, I'm sure, will agree with me. Now, your ward has selected a theme. Good. So he has come up with a paper, maybe the crucial chapter there. So my young researcher has gone to the professor. So she reads it. And you say you have selected that, like she knows the topic and hypothesis, everything well. So when she checks the file, everything is set. Now the idea is you have your selected theme is there. Your selected quote from the text, the source, maybe the primary source in this matter, and you have selected the authority. Means you have selected maybe based on like arguing out a case. You have taken an authority, and then you claim that okay, this the authority has said something like this, and then you say this is a kind of an analysis that you say. This is what you claim as an analysis. That is juxtaposing what we call as your first argument, then the quote from the text, the quote from the critic, and then you say, yes, I have argued out. Now, just keeping these four things together, do you think that you have done an analysis? Maybe my friends, those who are professors on the other side, might know what I intend when I say like this. Just because you have a piece of paper and where these three or four things placed one after the other, can you call it as an argument? Can you call it as an established kind of a fact, or as something, or is it just all ideas like scattered over there, on a paper? Now that is something which you have to be very careful of. So when you see from the young researchers' perspective, it is not sufficient. It is not sufficient. You should be able to convince through your own method of, in the sense of, or the style of presentation by which the case should be argued out. Then only you will reach a solution. So it is not enough that you support yourself by bringing in somebody. No. So what do we do? Now go to the next slide. First thing, that introduce the key aspects that you have selected to frame your discussion of the topic. Now, these are the things that you are going to discuss. It has already been there in the variable, or maybe in the literature survey, or maybe in the first or the second chapter, you have already dealt with the main aspects. Well, I don't have a particular topic in my mind. Otherwise, I would have told you, but we don't have time to go into such details. Then explain in detail how each aspect is extremely relevant to your analysis of the text. Now, how far? So you have to build that argument slowly and slowly. Now, how this is important for the development of the idea. Then you have to explain in detail how will you show what? The link between the aspect, the theory that you propose to do, and the episode from the fiction or drama. So you argue out a case logically from the first to the second to the third, and then slowly you try to bring in. Then you try to merge these two things together. If you don't do it, what is going to happen is people may not understand the logic. Why this is being sequentially put like this, where you don't see anything like as a harmony there. You don't find any synchronization of one idea with the other. They are just two different things. So first, you have to create a link by discussing on the key aspects, then the way in which this has to be contextualized, then go to the text. Now, next slide, please. Then what you have to do is develop your framework by showing the evidences. That is, everything is based on evidence. So evidence of the key aspect in specific scenes, episodes in the chosen text. So when you say trauma, it is not enough that you bring in the theory of trauma and then a painful scene together. It won't take you anywhere, I should say. No, of course, those two things are there. But how do you establish that? What helps you to establish your argument? Now, this is a crucial point which I don't see many people are really serious about when they begin their research. So this is necessary, as you must show that you are able to link the theoretical aspects to the text. Otherwise, what will happen is, if you merely talk about the aspects without showing the link, connecting the link, Well, it does not reflect what? The critical awareness of identification and explication. So there is this explication is almost like analysis there. So that kind of clear-cut analysis of each and every aspect has to be done there. So this we have to be careful about. Go to the next slide, please. Then you must show that you understand each aspect by discussing it fully. So no point is left out like that. And do not merely left. No, this is generally, I have found that even in reviews, when people send me review articles, I have seen that they just like send me a lot of external references. So it is not enough. Do not merely let the external reference materials that you select as evidence speak for you. No, they are not going to speak for you. They cannot be taken as something that really substantiate your point. No, it is somebody's point, not your point, because it has not contextualized the aspect that you are arguing out in your text, or according to your research design, or according to your hypothesis, or the variable that you have taken up for analysis. So if you don't do it, you are going to miss out something. And explain what you understand of the external reference, show your understanding of it, and comment on the relevance to the thesis. Now, this is what I have to say as a suggestion. Next one. Now, different kinds of formats. I don't want to elaborate on that, qualitative and quantitative type of research. I don't want to get into that because there will be a particular format. Maybe the MLA is there. Based on the format, you can clearly argue out how to format the thesis. Now, go to the structure. Next part is there. Go to the structure. So any research or a research called conclusion. Now, this will also help you to identify how far have you proceeded from the first to the last level. So if you keep a file related to hypothesis, and if you keep all these things together, you will never miss a point, because you know sequentially what was the last step and what you are doing now. Now, I needn't discuss about the next. I have already told you about this as a summary. Now, in slide number 39, you can see that the aims. So as a summary, we can call it like this. Page number 30, I'm sorry, slide number 39, you can see a summary. Aim and objectives, boundaries, methodology, result, conclusion, recommendations. Now, this is something that we have to go into in detail, but we don't have time. But I have already explained things that you are supposed to know, because here results are very important, because what are your main findings? In your open defense, the last question, or generally, the focus question will be, see, at the end of the entire kind of proceedings, you have done this, you have done that. Now, what are the findings? You say you propose to do a study on this. These are your objectives. This is your hypothesis. Fine, we all agree with that. But what are the findings that you have to give as an original kind of thing? Now, why do we arrive at? So why do we arrive at this kind of, or how do you arrive at this kind of a conclusion? That has to be substantially argued out. So what are the steps to be followed? Slide number 40, you can see that next is steps to follow. Slide, Dr. Shibani will move on to the next slide number 40. Thank you. Now, these are the steps that we need to follow. Find a working topic. I'm only summarizing. Read the selected text or text thoroughly. Identify the possible theory. Review the literature. Focus your topic narrowly with specific dimension. Read the selected articles thoroughly and evaluate them. Then, what assumptions do most, or at least some researchers seem to be making? Now, you have to go to the primary source again. Read the text again. Now, correlate the text and the theory. Prepare the outline of the draft, then the first draft, second draft, focus, all that. Finally, you come up with the what we call as a like bibliography and references, whatever it be at the end. So this or these sequence should be kept, or these steps have to be followed by every researcher to reach the milestone there. Now, what is the role of the word? Very important. Next slide. What is the role of the word? Now, these are just subjective kind of an analysis. Go to the next slide. Role of the word. What means a student there, my young researcher. Now he has to do what we call as the reading the primary source, report the topic, title, theme, submit the plan, routine discussion at least once in 2 weeks. Means he has to maintain a diary, because he has to be sure that what all things did I discuss and what all things I got, what next I should do. So keeping and maintaining a diary is very important. Then continuous modification without affecting the basic design, and then submission of the written drafts, approval of the draft, and then typing, all that. This is a very important. Then final copy, final submission. Now this is the role of the word, the student there. Go to the next. What happens here? Rapport with the supervisor is very important, and means if you quarrel with your supervisor, things are over. That's the problem here, because you will be demoralized. So they will. So any balanced mind or supervisor, they will support you throughout, no doubt about it. And what they expect is timely return of scripts after correction. Very important. Then clarify from them how to improve your draft. Then never assume that your supervisor will write for you. Now, this is another assumption among popular, because my critical idioms are not strong, sir. So why don't you help me by writing a few things? Don't expect your supervisor to write for you. Then provide, if you want to like your supervisor to read your draft, give big size, in the sense fonts which are adequately big, so that they are called visual friendly draft. Then once your draft is corrected, don't give the same draft next time. That's what I said. Never revert the uncorrected draft to the teacher. And the last step, of course, it's comical. The tragedy begins when you think you are better than the supervisor. There, I don't have any comment on that, but you have to be very, very careful about that. Having a rapport with the supervisor. Now, this is almost towards the end of the session. There, I told you this is next slide. You can use the MLA handbook, which is the 9th edition, the latest edition. We have to use that presently. Now this can change in maybe in a year or two. Next slide. How to conclude, the last part. How to conclude. Now this, as I said, how to write a bibliography. How to, next slide please. How to cite work, the in-text and the end-text, sources of material, library searching, internet searching, consistency of the what we call as the MLA style, footnotes, all those are part of the draft, or means keeping maintaining a foolproof kind of a draft. So these things should be recorded as and when you get a material for reading and using. So drafting is a very important part, and like citing them. Go to the next. This is a crucial problem, issues of plagiarism. Don't give a contract to an outside agency to write your PhD thesis. Please don't do that. It is unhealthy. And once, at least, I'm sure you will be caught somewhere in your life. You will be caught. The reason is, there can be a number of reasons, but never, ever, please give this, don't do this kind of a thing. Another problem is never plagiarize, means don't take ideas from other books without acknowledging it. So plagiarism is a major problem. What I have, and there are a number of sites, number of websites, number of tools, scans which are available now to find out how far this is how can we can avoid this. Now I have seen in your own, go to page number 47, slide number 47. In your college, I found a very interesting part in the website, because I have found that in the research part, there is what we call as research and development. So I do appreciate the BSS for creating this kind of an awareness. Look at that. Research policy manual, manual of academic publication, research projects, research-based activities, students engaged in survey. And to read the last 2 points, plagiarism rules. Plagiarism request issues which are plagiarism. So even college websites, university websites, they do insist on this. So I have taken this from your college BSS. So that shows how far people have become quality means related to that, how far they're aware of these issues. Next slide. Now this is something which I got for next slide. This is something which I got from my own kind of a thesis evaluation, a dissertation evaluation. I found, you can see a line there, the women that Northrop describes in the narrative resist their enslavement as an aspect of their lives, not revealed in the film version of the novel. Fine. This is written by a student. And I was surprised, because going by the age and the kind of language he or she possesses, I doubted, whether she will be able to write like this, or he will be able to write like this. So I checked it, and go to the next slide. Same thing. You can see that. And I got the article also. I got the article. I told him, I told her I should not disclose the gender there, him or her. Please don't do it, because you can easily be caught by a simple Google search. So before he or she went to the library for plagiarism check, I did it first. So it is the duty of the supervisor to find out whether it is there or not. Starting from undergraduate level itself, this has to be checked. Starting from postgraduate level, now that has to be checked. So this idea of borrowing sentences, borrowing ideas, like as such, that has to be checked. Okay, now go to the 50th slide. Now I have quoted from Umberto Eco, and he has written a number of novels, beautiful novels, famous ones, but he has also written a book like this, How to Write a Thesis. And in that, you have a famous quote, you must write a thesis that you are able to write. So Umberto Eco has made a statement like this, you must write a thesis that you are able to write. Now, please read that book. It is available online. If it is available online, you can download it, or if you can buy it, if you can keep it in your library, it will be a great asset. Umberto Eco's. And the other two books are very common. I should say Gabriel Griffin's book and MP Sinha's book. These two are common books which are there. Then that's all. Thank you. That's all about this particular presentation. Now, maybe somebody was asking for a particular slide. I think the organizers will help me out. And I think some people have asked me questions or posted questions. Let me see whether I can read those questions from there, or else
Murli Krishnan sir.
Yes.
We have somebody to moderate the session, like take up the questions, even because they have to pick it up from Facebook Live as well, YouTube Live as well. So I now invite Dr. Sana Faruqi, Assistant Professor, Department of English, the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, to kindly moderate this question answer session.
Just a minute. Dr. Shibani, could you listen to me properly throughout the particular program?
Yes, sir, we could.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sana, are you there?
Okay. Yes, I'm there. A very good afternoon, Dr. Murali Krishnan, sir. It was really enlightening. Let me throw some questions to you. We have so many questions right now. Question number 1, which was asked by Parveen Kumari, she's saying that how can we define qualitative in terms of research? Especially in literature, what is quality of research?
When we talk about research in literature, it is already in terms of qualitative, in the sense we depend on ideas and conventions, we depend on assumptions, we depend on values. We depend already on that. It's a preordained kind of a thing. We cannot question that. It is already set. Whereas when you use statistical kind of a thing, we can call it as quantitative. Now that is the difference. That is the major difference, or the basic difference between these two. In literature, when we talk about, since it is qualitative, now what happens generally is you assume certain things already. That is, it cannot be compared with physics or mathematics, because our paradigm is totally different compared to physics, chemistry, or mathematics. Now here, we as critics would say, it is something like a pre-paradigmatic kind of a stage. Now, we deal with notions, we deal with aspects, certain key aspects, and for that, we make use of concepts which are akin, similar, almost alike, so that we find what we call as a convention which are similar in thought, because it flows from one to the other. So when you read an article maybe on painting, maybe painting and literature, or maybe on terrorism, maybe September 11 attack, as you have seen today, September 11. Now, if you read articles related to that, what we require here is actually a set parameter on certain concepts which are akin. Now, how do we combine these aspects in such a way that now when it is you cannot do it in the quantitative way. So when we say qualitative, the idea is it is mostly conceptual in nature, especially in literary studies, where we focus on those assumptions, those principles or theoretical perspectives. So that is why I say most of the ideas, except for maybe applied linguistics, classroom teaching dynamics, or ELT, except for that, where we have what we call as the survey, questionnaire, sample study, random sampling, all that, which may be a test score, etc. Those things are quantitative in nature, so that we end up with almost like a scientific kind of a data. Whereas in this case, which are notional in nature, which are generally based on principles. Now, where we have to correlate and we have to assume that one argument is supported by the other in terms of its inherent logic, whether it is similar or dissimilar. So that way, it is totally different from other forms of research. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Next
Thank
question.
you so much for the detailed description. Yeah, next question is from Vidya Sagar Kumar. How to develop working topic for research paper or thesis?
How to develop?
How to develop working topic for research paper and thesis?
That's what I think I have spent around 20 minutes on that. Like you have to identify an area which you really like, which you really believe it's a serious issue, it's a serious problem. And one thing that I can help you is please don't like do it immediately. Maybe it may take some time, but you can write those titles maybe in your system, or maybe in your computer, maybe in your notebooks. You can write those and keep it as like things to do. And if possible, when you get time, you just go through materials which are generally available and identify how far the research has been done in this area. In most cases, to many of our disappointment, many people must have done almost in similar lines. So what you have to do in that particular case is try to bring in which is really fresh, something which is really original. Now that is required as far as a working topic is concerned. So there can be flashes, maybe reading a newspaper, reading from mass media, as I said, maybe some novel, maybe reading maybe an article itself can give you an idea about how this can be used. Maybe if I talk about Amar Chitragatha, there can be other representations, graphic novels also, and you can think of ideology, hegemony, maybe visual kind of representation, female perspective or male perspective, male gaze for that matter, like that. It all all these things can come to our mind, depending on how far we are interested, how far we are learned about these possible perspectives. That is how we generally get ideas. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Next question is from Sahil Bhagat. He's saying, can we employ cooperative comparative and eco-critical analysis concurrently? If yes, then what, according to you, should be the criteria to carry forward research?
Comparative and
Comparative and
comparative.
eco-critical analysis concurrently.
Yeah, it is possible. Why not? Depending on the fictional narrative that you take, it is possible to have different perspectives, different aspects coming together. It is possible, yes, and that depends on the material that we use for the sake of analysis. It is. I cannot just give you a blanket assurance that this is how it has to be done. But there are enough a number of possibilities to do what we call as comparative levels, from different perspectives. Same text, two different perspectives, and a kind of an analysis there. Possible, no problem.
Dr.
Okay, sir.
Sana, because of
Next question.
paucity of
Yes.
Dr. Sana, because of paucity of time, let us make it the last question for the day.
Okay, so the last question is, while research suppose writers have been thought of, texts have been selected, theory have been chosen, but during developing framework for the research or chapterization, how to go about?
Yeah, it's a very important thing. I didn't get time enough to talk about that in detail, but that depends on the interaction that you have with the supervisor. Sometimes the supervisor will help you out in dealing with that, but theoretical framework has to be worked out along with your development of hypothesis. Once you know that these are your variables, it is possible for you to identify the ways in which how far I should go, what are the limits, and then within that you can use the theory, and based on that theory, you can have what we call as the subdivisions. So uh, there is a possibility, but that depends on the topic, that depends on the fiction that you take, and that depends on the kind of interaction that you have with your supervisor, because it's too early to talk about that, how far that theoretical framework can be evolved out of, because each study will have its own kind of a framework, which I cannot now presuppose or maybe predict. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Murali Krishnan sir. Do we have Shamata ma'am? Shamata ma'am, are you there?
Excuse me, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Diwali from Raipur.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, ma'am. Shamta ma'am is there.
Good afternoon, sir. I have two or three some questions, mostly for the benefit of the students. I just want to when we submit our synopsis, our research proposal for RDC, we have some points like objectives, research methodology, and chapterization. So in the previous RDC, we had some this thing. You can say discussion. I wanted to your opinion on that. Is it compulsory to write objectives in points or numbering objects?
It is always good to outline the objectives one after the other. It is always nice, so that it gives a structure to the argument. That's all. There is no theory, there is no principle as such.
Okay,
but
sir.
it is always
And
good
sir,
to have a kind of an outlining.
So, and we have to give a very brief description of our research methodology, which we generally say that it will be explorative and analytical and all, and we also say that we will be consulting MLA, the latest edition and all. So is it wrong to include that MLA and other things in research methodology? It is a part of research methodology.
It is very much part of that, but I don't know what kind of judgment is being done at the RDC or maybe the research, the doctoral committee there. But generally in our state, when we submit it, when we go for discussion, we generally make sure that what is important is the objective and the hypothesis and the possible conclusion that can come out of this research. other things are not very significant, if not totally insignificant, not very important, because they can be revived, they can be reviewed. But the other things is the title, the objective, the hypothesis, the possible outcome, the methodology. These things cannot be altered.
Right.
These things cannot be altered.
Yeah.
So those things are generally taken as vital parts.
So chapterization
Chapterization is also important. Maybe in a matter of you must have suggested 4, but it can be later on. It can become 5. No problem at all. It can become 5. No problem.
It is tentative and a brief working plan, sort of, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That is what is expected. But you cannot change 2-3 things. Very important. The hypothesis, the possible conclusion that you are projecting at, and the objective of the study. These things cannot be compromised.
And we were told that it is not generally matter of much importance which MLA you are following. You people said that we will follow 9th edition. I think we should follow latest edition. We should follow.
In my state, it is 9th. They have already given. Yeah, they have already given an order. The academic committee has already given an order.
Yeah.
9th.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And moreover, what researchers and the supervisors say is you have to follow the latest MLA style sheet.
Right,
and the
that's what I said.
latest one is the 9th one.
Exactly. And it is a very comprehensive one, sir, this time.
Right,
it's a very comprehensive one.
Right.
Thank
I now request Dr. Shamta Chaudhary ma'am, coordinator ISPEL, for her remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be part of ISPEL, coordinating with other forums and all. And I'm really obliged today that college of this great college signed a memorandum, and we could be part of this academic fraternity. And it's indeed, you can say, and listening to Murali sir is indeed a pleasure. And when he talked about research, a topic which I think it's quite close to his heart, and he himself has coordinated few seminars on it. So it was a pleasure listening to him, and I feel that such type of these virtual, or you can say offline and online, these seminars, they give impetus to our thoughts also, and we feel that we are doing justice to it. So when this BSSS College, Bhopal, came to us, and we feel that this virtual workshop on research methodology will bear fruits, and today we can see that this collaboration of Bhopal School of Social Sciences along with Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature have given us a new hope, new journey, and a new path to move along. And I can say more collaborations of this type will take place. We'll be meeting again and again so that this collaboration gives us a new idea to move. And I'm really thankful to Ghansham sir for giving me a push again and again. Whenever I thought that so much of intellectuals make me feel that I'm not at par with others and I have to study a lot. So it's really, I think, both the Bhopal School of Social Sciences and this ISPEL, I'm grateful for giving us this opportunity to listen to such academicians, and best of luck. May we have more this particular types of seminars, and we keep, and I'm really thankful to Father also for enlightening us and giving us a hope that this academic platform will be so enriching for each and every scholar and teacher and academician that in future also such collaborations will take place in other colleges and universities too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shamta ma'am. Now I present the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Murali Krishnan sir. I just share it. Is it visible?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
visible.
Ghanshyam sir, with your
Thank you,
words.
thank you, thank you.
Yes, yes, it's visible and it's glorious also. And as Dr. Kshamta said, I'm not the intellectual. Every individual has intel actually. So like the system says, intel is always there, right? So in the same way, every individual has intel actually. So one who has the intel actually becomes the intellectual. So for this intellectual endeavor of Dr. Murali Krishnan, this certificate goes to Dr. Murali Krishnan on behalf of BSS and ISPEL, a joint collaboration and a new era of memorandum of understanding to facilitate and elevate.
Thank you so much, Ghanshyam sir. I now call Dr. Sana Faruqi once again to deliver the official vote of thanks. Sana?
Okay, so I, Dr. Sana Faruqi, Assistant Professor from the Department of English, BSSS, would like to take this opportunity to thank all the dignitaries on behalf of the department. First, I would like to thank Dr. Father John PJ, Principal BSSS, to take out time from his busy schedule to grace the event with his benign presence. I would also like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor G. A. Ghanshyam, founder and General Secretary, ISPEL, for inspiring and encouraging us with his words of wisdom. A special thanks goes to the sound resource person, Dr. Murali Krishnan TR, Associate Professor and Head, MES, Asmabi College, Kerala, for enlightening with his great learning experience on research methodology. It was really nice. Last but not the least, heads and coordinators of both the departments, Dr. Shamta Chaudhary and Dr. Shibani Basudube, to organize a national webinar even amidst the pandemic. I must thank the organizing team, volunteers for working so hard for the past few days to make this webinar successful. So thank you so much, everyone.
A special word of thanks on behalf of the Bhopal School of Social Sciences to Dr. Ashok Sachdeva sir for being with us today, for being a witness to this signing of an MOU. He is the Vice President ISPEL. We thank you wholeheartedly, sir. Ashok sir.
Thank you so much for your benign acknowledgement. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you, all of you. We stand completely humbled with this participation which we have witnessed and this for being a part of this wonderful session. Hope to have more fruitful